Good morning, people. Hope everyone is doing good. Apologies for being slightly late, but I hope everyone is doing well. It's another beautiful day to do some portfolio reviews. To get cracking, let me switch on my camera as well. Hello, everyone. Hello, McVal. Good to see ya. What's happening with my nights? It seems so shadowy. I don't know. Yeah, hope everyone is doing well. I'm ready for the show. Doing some portfolio reviews. I actually don't know who we're going to be looking at today, so let me have a quick look. Portfolio reviews. Okay, we got Tim Shee and Stephanie Arndorfer. Okay. Right. Okay, cool. Cool. But as always, we're going to be starting out with some yapping. We're going to have a yap session first, and then we'll see. We'll dive into some reviews. Hello, Stephanie. Good to see you here. Hope you're doing well, and hope you're ready for the portfolio review. During the review, feel free to ask any questions about what I'm saying, right? That will be good. Let me zoom out a bit. I'm so close. Oh my god. A little bit more space. There we go. I'm happy that it's Friday. I am happy that it's Friday because this week has been pretty intense. A lot of it had to do with the team challenges. We've been doing a lot of stuff on the team challenges. They've been off to a good start. But yeah, it's as always the beginning of the team challenge is just like really intense because a lot of stuff needs to happen. But yeah, that is over now, which is good. So the busy stuff is over. The only thing that we need to do, and this is something that I was working on yesterday. You can see my notepad here. I was making some notes. I was looking into reorganizing the way that we do the vote at the end because we wanted to make some changes for a while. And I think we're going to go back to like an older system and then make the points, because we want to go back to a point system and we want to make it more transparent to everyone. So that would mean that you can actually see the points and how much your team scored and all that kind of stuff on, I don't know how we're going to do it yet, but like on a visual somewhere, which is good. Let me see. We're getting some messages from people. Let me make sure that like an announcement is going out as well, because that would be good, wouldn't it? But yeah, how is everyone doing? Hope everyone is doing good in the chat. Let's see. Oh yeah, and also we have a bunch of. Oh, that's why. Got it. I haven't changed that one yet. All right, so the announcement should be going out now. What I was going to say, we have 2 upcoming workshops as well, which is really exciting. We've got one with Max Kutsensko. He's a texture artist at Ubisoft Barcelona, and he's going to be talking to us about like building really complex shapes in Substance Designer, which is really good, and especially focusing on splines. So I have no clue how to use splines in Substance Designer because I'm still running like a really old version. So I'm really interested to learn from that one myself as well. And then we have returning guest Yu Chu after that as well, at the end of the month. And he's going to be talking about like how to build a master material in Unreal, which is really cool. So we got like 2 really awesome workshops lined up for everyone. I'm looking forward to that as well. So yeah, we got a bunch of cool stuff. Team challenges are happening. And then hopefully after this week, I can carve out more time to work on the courses. Stephanie saying doing great. I have a new job since Monday. Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. Is it in games? I mean, I'm assuming so, but it's rough to make assumptions sometimes. That is awesome. Congratulations. Hello, Idris. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And welcome to the chat. Thank you. Yes, it is in games. Hey, awesome, Stephanie. Let's go. That's awesome. Congratulations. It is difficult to break in. Well, I don't know if you broke in already. I don't know. Or are you just switching jobs? I don't know. It looks like you might have some experience already. I'm not sure. But anyway, regardless, congratulations. That is awesome. Let's see. So splines are cool, using them a bit right now. Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I think honestly, from like all the things that Substance Designer has introduced over the last couple of years, splines might be the one thing where I would want to switch for it. That would probably be like the only thing that kind of has me intrigued. But yeah, I don't use Substance Designer enough to like really switch at this point. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. Always happy to hear about like success stories from people. I mean, honestly, we're going to be looking at your portfolio in just a bit, right? And I feel like you've built up the skills to get into the industry or like get a proper job, because the stuff you're doing is awesome. So that is looking great. Yeah. Yeah, what else is happening? Nothing that much. Yesterday evening was like one of my first free evenings. So I spent a little bit of time just playing like a little bit of Assassin's Creed, which we might do on stream in just a little bit. I don't know. Depends on how much time we have left. And then we can just like casually talk and chill and all that kind of stuff. I think that would be cool. But we'll see. Because also today I can stream for a little bit longer because I don't have a mentorship because I got moved, which is good. Hello, Pewdie. Hello, Lily. Good to see you both. Hope you're both doing well. Which one? I'm playing Shadows at the moment. And yeah, I like the world. The world is really cool. I think the changing of seasons is actually like pretty impressive. I like that they do that stuff. And yeah, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. The only thing that would be this is a very specific environment artist complaint, right? That I have about the game at this point. I just love going out into the world and just exploring by myself. And there's a lot of places that I don't know if they will be filled up in the future, but it feels like the terrain seems to be carved out to have content there, but there is no content. So I go into spaces where I'm like, ooh, there's probably going to be something there. And then it's just like a random open place. And it's just like, what? Why is it here? So I've had that a couple of times already. So I don't know if that is because I am an environment artist and I don't really care about like the main story all too much. I just want to explore stuff. Maybe. Because maybe it's like a story progression, right? Like at a certain point, maybe the whole thing changes. I don't know. But yeah, that is one of the weird things that I've run into like a couple of times where I'm like, oh my god, yeah, there seems to be something here, and then you go into like this little valley or something like that, and it's like, there's nothing. Weird. But yeah, other than that, it's a beautiful game. I'm still impressed by like the scale and the visibility, right? Like for sure, like Crimson Desert is still in the highlights when it comes to that, and deservingly so, right? Because they take it to like the max. But like when you look at like Assassin's Creed games, like just the visibility, how far you can see, and how much, especially foliage, they render on screen at all times, it is still like really impressive. I think we've just gotten so used to the Assassin's Creed games like looking pretty great that like any incremental change they do is just not noticed like you would have from, I don't know, let's say another developer, I think. It's still pretty cool. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with that one. And then, yeah, I need to get into some like more game testing. So I need to carve out some time this weekend to do some proper game testing, because I am a part of like the indie game arena jury. Like the indie game booth jury. That's what I'm a part of for Gamescom. So I need to test like a whole bunch of games, and I need to have a look at some cool games, some cool upcoming stuff. Flight Sim got some draw distance as well and looks pretty good. Well, that is true. That is true. I just don't care about flying around. But it is also impressive tech wise, right? Just to be able to, first of all, like store the amount of data that they're doing, right? To render like a whole planet is pretty bonkers as well. Like just the logistics of like all the data that you need to have there, that's pretty crazy. But yeah, honestly, apart from that, not that much is happening. It's just been team challenge stuff. It's just been yeah, mostly team challenges. So yeah. I tried it out a few times and it's pretty impressive, just not my type of thing gameplay wise. Yeah, same for me. Same for me. I don't really care about like the flight simulator stuff too much. But then again, like here's the thing, right? Like I can enjoy a game for like its technical prowess and it's like impressive visuals and all that kind of stuff. And I can look at it from the outside and I can be like, oh my god, that is awesome. Even though I don't want to play it, you know? Like detached from what I want to do. And yeah, I think Flight Simulator is like a good example of those games. A very good example indeed. Right. I'm gonna give a quick introduction to people that are new because sometimes I forget to do that. So I'm Timothy Dries. I'm the founder of Beyond Extent. So I'm the guy behind this YouTube channel. So welcome to BE. I have a decade of experience in environment art myself. So if you want to ask any questions, anything you wanna ask about, or any questions that you might have when it comes to environment art yourself or getting into games, feel free to ask that. And then we can chat about it too. Right. Without further ado, let's jump into some portfolio reviews then, right? So let me switch over to the main screen. There we go. And the reminder for people to ask questions is not only for new people, right? So if you have any questions during the entire thing, feel free to ask. Right, so these portfolio reviews, how they work, I grade them on 4 different things: hireability, presentation, artistry, and technique. Hireability is all the stuff that you need to get on your portfolio, like your CV, like is your alignment between yourself and your work good? Are you easy to contact? Like all that kind of stuff. Your presentation should speak for itself. It's the thumbnails, it's the breakdowns, and just like the overall design and the presentation of the work. As well as the amount of images, which is a big one. Artistry and technique, those are like your artistic skills and your technical skills broken down. So those 4 things we're going to be looking at today. We are going to start out with Tim Chi. So Tim Chi is currently transitioning into professional game development with a focus on environment and level art. Okay. Interesting. Because that doesn't, with your career goals, right? I want you to be ambitious. Like I want you to tell me like, what is your goal, right? If you're currently transitioning, that's something that you're doing now. With your career goal is where you want to be in the future, right? So that is not giving me too much. I mean, you're transitioning away from something, which is cool. So I'll keep that in mind. But we'll see what we can talk around when it comes to this. Right. First of all, Tim Chi design crafted with care. I will always do this. Tim Chi. It doesn't look like you have an art station. Cool. The reason why I do this is because ArtStation is just like the foundational thing to use right now, right? So I just want to be transparent. That's always all the time that I do. If someone sends me like unique portfolio, I don't really care about like your web design skills. I want to see your work, right? And ArtStation just gives us like a nice template to do this. But we will continue on. So Tim Chi, emotion leads by action. What does that mean? Emotion leads by action. It would be more interesting to at least give some introduction to who you are, right? Like, do you want to go into game environment art? Like, call yourself like a game environment artist, right? Or give me like a little bit of a blurb of like who you are, what got you inspired to do art, and where you want to go into the future, something like that, right? Emotion leads by art, that feels like something that like a big corporation says about their work because they don't really know what they're doing yet, you know? So try to make it something that is like a bit more personal, right? In this case. Let's see. Let's have a look at your LinkedIn, and then this is your Gmail. Okay. Cool. So see here, this is more interesting already, right? Unreal artist. Okay, I know that you specifically want to do stuff in Unreal, which is cool. An Unreal Engine artist based in Taipei, Taiwan, with a strong foundation in 3D production. I specialize in environment design, cinematic rendering, virtual production, and blueprint scripting in Unreal Engine. This is cool. I like all of this, right? Like, this is cool. I wonder why that's not on your portfolio immediately. So whether it's building realistic worlds or stylized worlds, I strive to be I strive for technical precision, artistic clarity, and pipeline proficiency. That is not you writing it wrong. That is me still waking up. I mean, I've been up for like a couple of hours, but geez, I still feel like I can't read. Open to freelance and full-time opportunities in game development, animation, and virtual production. Let's connect. Okay, cool. This is way more interesting to read than emotion leads by action, you know? Take all of this stuff, condense it to a single sentence, replace that here, and that already gives me like way more information about who you are, right? That is really, really cool. Can you talk about Beyond Extend Academy? Yes, I can, Hamza. Let me finish this portfolio review first, and then I can talk a little bit about Beyond Extend Academy. That's awesome. Thank you for asking, though. And also, good to see you, Carla. Hope you're doing well, and welcome back. Hey, and Mishard, welcome back to you too. So we talked about your LinkedIn profile, right? Which is actually pretty cool. Let's see. Build real-time environments for news and broadcast industry. This is cool. I wonder if we're going to see that on your portfolio, because that might be relevant. And then brainstorm school. Okay, cool. Contact information. Okay, so a couple of things here. These are small things. If you want people to reach out to you immediately, right, do the same thing that you're doing here. Have like an email on your LinkedIn that they can reach out to you, or at least link back to your portfolio or something like that, right? Because this feels very bare bones at this point. It almost, and this might probably be true, it just reads like you don't even use LinkedIn. If you don't use LinkedIn, which is fine, right? That is your choice. Don't add it on your portfolio. That is totally fine then. Right, so it feels like a little bit bare bones. I want way more information because, I mean, this is pretty good when it gives me an idea of what you have done before, but I'm not really getting a sense of what you can currently do, right? Like on your LinkedIn. So it's almost currently the vision that I have is that you have your portfolio, but that is hidden away from LinkedIn. And then your LinkedIn is pretty bare bones in terms of like what you can do as current work, right? What I would love to see is almost a merging of the way you lay out your LinkedIn profile and your work coming together to become like a full profile of yourself. Because right now it feels the two are just completely disconnected. And yeah, from LinkedIn, even not having a link back to your portfolio that I can see immediately, I can only judge you on like what you write here, and that's not a lot, right? So make it visual, make it interesting, because you are an artist, right? And your visuals need to be the thing that sell. Cool. Okay, so we talked about all of that. Okay, working in progress. Password protected. Okay, that's fair enough. Oh, it just opens like a screenshot? Yeah, don't really like that. Like, give me more information about what this is, right? Okay. Okay. Chinese Lunar New Year font design. The pitch is a Chinese Lunar New Year style font design, main colors red and gold, festive and auspicious atmosphere. Oh, buddy. Is this AI stuff? Is this like a prompt that you worked from? Or is this just like a bad translation or something like that? Maybe I'm reading into it too much. References were mostly from Pinterest, and one particular white corridor image caught my eye and became the keystone in the environment's composition. Okay, so I'm assuming it talks about this one. Right. So this is
法股现在每年
interesting. Okay, so this is for like broadcasting, right? Interesting. Okay. It is pretty cool to see. You don't really see a lot of that stuff. At least in my genre, you don't really see a lot of that stuff, right? But that is cool. I like that. It also keeps in mind like making
法股现在
something
每年除夕的
interactive as well, which is really cool. I like to see that. The only issue that I have is that we start with like the most boring stuff at the top, and then we go to the most interesting stuff at the bottom, right? So you are basically killing your flow when it comes to your potential as an artist, right? Because you want to impress with the top stuff, where it's basically like, hey, look, this is the most impressive stuff that I can do. And if you then want to see more, you can scroll down and keep going, right? But put the impressive stuff up top and then filter down. Because all this stuff where you lay out the concept and kit bashing in Unreal Engine and all that kind of stuff, yeah, that is interesting, but I would put that below the final result. Let me dive into this because would only be used for a limited amount of time. I used Unreal's free assets as my building blocks for a quick build. 80% of the objects were Unreal assets and a few modeled in Blender. Okay, quick thing there. I want to see the difference between what you built and the Unreal Engine ones. That's the stuff that I want to see, right? Where do you add your value in this project, right? Because if you're just thrown together like Unreal Engine stuff, anyone can do that, and that's like pretty easy to make look good, right? But where do you add your value to this project? Right. And then we got personal work. These are like drawings, right? Right. Okay. This is cool stuff for like a concept art portfolio, just totally irrelevant for like an environment art portfolio. The only thing that I might be able to glean from this is that potentially you could be making your own concept art too, but in the industry, it is highly unlikely that you will be doing both the concept art and the actual modeling for the environment, right? Plus, this seems to be like very, very functional concept art, which takes a lot of time to build. You can probably be way quicker when just like starting in 3D when it comes to this sort of stuff. If you want to build concept art, it needs to be focused on the ideation. And with 3D, we can focus on the execution, right? So the interesting thing about concept art is this, right? Where it showcases like the ideation, different spaces, how they work with the gameplay and all that kind of stuff. This is the interesting stuff about concept art. When it gets to this is almost like you can just make that in 3D at this point. There's some cool stuff here. Like I like the way that you use shapes and your line weights, like especially here. I mean, I would exaggerate some of the line weights to like differentiate like different shapes. But again, this is not like a concept art review, right? And this highlights one big thing, right? I don't know what you want to do because your portfolio is just throwing everything at me all at once, which is not really what you want to do. What your portfolio is supposed to be doing is, hey, I am transitioning away from something and I want to do this, right? So what that means is that you should almost not be showing anything from the thing that you want to do, or sorry, from the thing that you did, but you should all show the things that you want to do, right? That is a big thing. If you, let's say, if you want to go in, I'm going to try to make it really clear, right? So if you, I'm going to go for a stupid example. If you are a car mechanic that goes into art, like your portfolio should not be built out of like, hey, I can fix all these cars and I can also do art, right? Pretty irrelevant. I would focus most of your work on what you want to do in the future. And then maybe if I scroll all the way at the bottom, it says previous or old work or something like that with a clear separation between the two, and have like a couple of the best images that you have, right? But keep it at that. I want the bulk of your work to be future oriented compared to what it is now. Cool. We skipped over these ones. Right, so this is for like another news channel, right? 2024 election. I'm getting the sense that like most of the work here is like 2 years old almost. Because this is 2024 as well. Then I'm going to make the assumption that this is 2024 too, right? Background change functions. Oh, this is 2025. Okay, so this is like a year old. The reason why I bring this up is I'm trying to establish a timeline for the work that you're doing. And if you want to get into this industry, you have to dedicate your time into personal work that is relevant for environment art, right? Because I don't know when these projects got posted, which is another thing that is missing from the website, right? But let's say if these things were done recently, that indicates to me that you have no clue what environment design or like 3D environment design really is about, right? Because this is the thing that you show off the most when it comes to 3D, and that is professional work, so that's going to be limited. But I want to see what you do in your personal work and how that aligns to where you want to go in the future, right? So already there's a couple of things that we could do. I would honestly switch to ArtStation, cut out all the stuff that is not relevant to what you want to do, right? Like environment art, and make sure that it's, maybe I'm questioning if, no, you mentioned like level art, then that is specifically 3D. Environment art can sometimes be confusing because there's some people, you technically have 2D environment art as well. So maybe that is where the confusion might come from just a little bit. But I would only focus on one of them. You can only do 2D or 3D. And in this case, we're a 3D channel, right? So I'm assuming that you want to do 3D stuff. So yeah, make it clear that that is the thing that you want to do. Put that front and center. Like if I open your portfolio, it needs to almost be immediately clear that like, okay, this is what you want to do, 100%. Right. Let's have a look at some of these other ones. And also, one big thing about this industry is that this industry is like really, really passion driven, right? So let's say you only do the work that you're supposed to be doing at work, creating stages in 3D for news channels. The likeliness of you getting hired in a games environment, like in a game studio in general, are going to be non-existent. There might be a small chance, but I would say that it's going to be less than 1% success. So that means that you need to focus on as much of your time that you can of your personal work, how much time you can dedicate to it. It needs to be focused on making your own assets or your own small dioramas or environments to convince me that you know what you're doing, that you want to get into this industry, right? Because at the moment, I'm not really seeing anything like that. This is actually, interestingly enough, already from the first glance, this might be the most relevant project that I've seen on your portfolio, but it is probably also the oldest one. This is like 3 to 4 years old probably when you were working on it. So I want to see more stuff like this. And again, start out with the interesting stuff up top, right? I'm gonna show you. I'm just gonna go to like a random post here. Like, we will be talking about Stephanie's work in just a bit, right? But this is what you want to do. You want to have your most impressive shot up top and showcasing like, hey, this is how it looks at the end, and then you go into breakdowns, right? It's almost like a template that you can follow, right? So you start out with like, wow, this is the full thing, and then you break down how you created the full thing. That's what I would do. Because you're doing it the opposite way, where you start out with like the non-interesting stuff first, and then you go into more interesting stuff. Which means that if I open this up and I'm like, I don't want to see this, and I click away, you lost me, right? So put the interesting visual stuff up front so that you immediately give the idea of like, yes, okay, this is what I want to do, and this looks cool, right? That's what you want to start out with first. Because you do it in the thumbnail, right? But you need to continue that into the actual project itself. Right. Um, 2024. Yeah. I'm curious about the result here. Yeah, this stuff is looking cool though. I do like it from a visual perspective, right? Like basically being able to implement anything into like a real life scenario. This stuff is cool. I like what you're doing with it, right? It is just, yeah, you need to showcase like game relevant stuff because this is only the beginning, right? You need to have a high bar, like a high quality bar, and you need to aim for that too. Because games by themselves, they have a high quality bar when it comes to things, right? Okay, cool. So this is going to be a difficult one, but let's go back. I think hireability right now is really, really low. The reasons for that are where to find information about yourself is very scattered, and it's very difficult to find like a concrete like timeline of what you did, right? Because even if we go to your portfolio, the first project is something that you made in 2024. Your third project is something that you made in 2025. And then I think this is like 2023. So in terms of timeline, it is really difficult for me to piece things together at the moment, right? Also, you start out with things that are not that relevant to game art, right? Because what you're doing here is you have a pre-rendered asset that is just being projected onto like a 3D screen, right? And then they green screen like a person in, or do like, I don't know, something fancy with like virtual production or something like that. But that is not game art. That is not what we're doing in games. I want to see you make 3D scenes that are built for games with that in mind, right? And if you do something like this, which is probably going to be the closest thing that you have right now, well, sorry, like, but this one gets pretty close as well. But from what we can see at the top, this one might be the most interesting one. I want to see what you build, right? Because if you just compile like a bunch of assets together, everyone can do that. That's the easy stuff. I want to see you build things from scratch and tell a story around those things, right? So that means that your hireability at this point we're at the start, right? I want to see you do way more. There's the only thing that we can really lean on right now might be again, like this project that is buried at the bottom, right? Which is showcasing some like really interesting stuff. Even though I can't click on anything. But if let's say we look at this, right? I'm gonna assume that this is all just like, this is not your work. This is all just like pre-assembled assets, right? I'm just gonna have to make that assumption. Let me see. Because there's no information on this whatsoever. Ba-da-ba-ba. Yeah, so most of the models were gathered from Sketchfab, Unreal Engine Library, and a few Blender models. Okay, so again, like the only thing that I can look at for this is maybe how you put things into a scene, right? For games, that is the easy stuff. Again, everyone can do that. Like we want to see more. So that means that your hireability is going to be really, really low at the moment. Your presentation is pretty confusing as well. It's all over the place. There's no sense for me to get a sense of the timeline of what you did at which point and what your improvement has been over time. It also, in terms of presentation, there's also no clear showcase of you knowing what you should be doing to get into games, right? So that hints at like an understanding of even not even knowing what game environment art means and how you need to get there, right? There's a lot of information on this. We did some podcasts on this as well. These podcasts are really old, but they're still relevant, right? Because when it comes to the core things you need to get into games art, that hasn't really changed. Sure, the fidelity and some of the workflows might have changed, but like the core things that you need to get into the games industry, right? Like modeling, texturing, UVing, high poly to low poly baking, Unreal Engine knowledge, presenting your work in Unreal Engine, building, like all that kind of stuff. That hasn't changed. So it's time to take a look at what being a environment artist in the games industry means, and really try to align your work with that. That's where I would begin. So yeah, presentation. There is some stuff here happening, right? Like I like that you're trying to think about like the title and some of the thumbnails. You know, like some of this stuff looks pretty interesting, even if it's not like game relevant. So there is some redeeming qualities there. So let's go with a 3. When it comes to artistry, this is a difficult one because a lot of that is just, again, it's based on you putting stuff into the engine together, but that is not what we want to look at in games, right? We want to see you do more. I'm going to give you a 2 for this, and then techniques, it's just going to be a 1 because honestly, yeah, there's nothing here that really points me towards like a thing that you did yourself, right? Even here, you say that you have done things yourself for this environment, but then you don't showcase them. So I cannot trust you by your word. I want to see visuals, right? And that is going to be really important. Like if you're trying to convince me that you can do the work, you cannot just say that you do the work. I want you to show me that you can do the work, right? Super important. We cannot take anyone by their word. You have to take people by what they show, right? Actions are more important than what anyone says. So, yeah, techniques, there's nothing for me to judge really at this point. Maybe there's a little bit of a redeeming quality when it comes to your composition, but that falls more into the artistry bracket. But yeah, techniques, there's nothing really there. So my recommendations is look into... You have to look into what environment art for games means, right? That means the modeling is decent. I mean, you can already use some of the modeling skills that you have, but you need to look into, you know, high to low poly modeling. Dream sheet, creating tilables. I'm not going to name it all here, but you need to get more acquainted with what environment art for gamers means, and then align your work. Again, I recommend you to look at, like Miguel was saying, the podcast, right? Like listen to the podcast. There's one called Environment Art Responsibilities, I think, which is like a pretty old iteration of our podcast. But listen to that episode. Try to break it down and see what your responsibilities are. Another thing that you can do is look at job openings across the world for an environment artist position and see what they require you to do, because that gives you like a really good indication of the skills that you need to be learning for that position, right? But yeah, you want to learn what that means and then align your work with those things, right? So yeah. But hey, thank you for putting yourself out there here, Tim. I think it is sometimes really difficult to find like good information or like know what information that you should trust when you're basically flooded by like a sea of information that's already out there, right? So I know that this might be harsh, like the scoring especially, right? But you're at the beginning of your journey, right? Which is totally fine. And if you become more focused on where you need to go, that is going to help you spend more time on the things that actually matter rather than just trying to do like a whole bunch of random things, right? So this is an exercise on focus, like really figuring out what you need to do, focus on those things, and then dedicate your time to those things, right? And if you have any follow-ups, if you want to ask any questions, you can find me in the Discord. Cool. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. And I would say best of luck. Marius is saying, hi Tim, how do I take part in the Whip Wednesday? I could just create a post in the channel. Yes. And Lily is answering it already. Mark it with the Whip Wednesday tag. Yeah, you just post it, mark it as Whip Wednesday, and then whenever Whip Wednesday comes around, I'll have a look at it. Hamza is asking about the Beyond Extent Academy stuff. Yeah, if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask. But let me give you like a broad overview, right? And I'll show you the current stage. It's just been a team challenge. We haven't really had a lot of time to work on it. Keep in mind, this is all work in progress, but we are building roadmaps. We're basically building lessons that can then be turned into roadmaps. So let's say you want to get into games and you want to know the core skills, and you go in this roadmap, and this roadmap is basically going to lay out how to start looking for references, what is low poly modeling, what is high poly modeling, unwrapping, asset optimization, baking, all that kind of stuff is going to be laid out in here. And we are trying to build like a bunch of these like different roadmaps. So one for foliage, for example, where we take you from like a full introduction to foliage, and it's just going to be like, okay, why is it important? What are biomes? What makes plants? What are shape references? Like all those things. And you can see that like the lessons are like really dense, you know? But we try to add a lot of information in here to give you all the tools that you need to build your own, foliage in this case, right? But every lesson is going to be like of relevant density, because we really want to give you just like all the tools and like really in-depth lessons on like all of it. So yeah, and then every lesson is going to be built up with exercises, with videos, with images that explain everything. This one is still work in progress, so I still need to add a couple of things here and there. But yeah, that is the way that we're kind of building everything up. It is going to be very dense, beautifully laid out, as we always try to do with the stuff that we're doing, to make it visually really clear and distinct. And then, yeah, we have like a bunch of videos.
On them, which looks like this, but in that case, we need complex branch setups. I try to
like
look
fully edited videos. So yeah, that is what we're trying to do for all the lessons. We currently have 27 lessons in total. ranging from, I think we covered most of the foliage pipeline. We have almost all the core skills covered already, and we are slowly exploring the first iterations of what the other roadmaps could be. So, for example, I've been starting out on the art fundamentals. So I've been building a track on like color theory, for example, what that is, how to use it in games, how it can affect your mood, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm building a lot of content for this one, for example. You can see with a lot of examples again. Yeah, that is what we're trying to build. We are trying to build basically the main issue that I'm trying to solve with this is the chaos of online resources, right? We work with industry professionals. All the people that you'll see in here are all people that have worked on like one, if not multiple, like professional projects. And they then come on as the instructor, and we build a roadmap around their knowledge, right? But what we wanted to do was to, specifically with those roadmaps, we saw an issue with like, if you're self-taught, you go into YouTube and you start like 3D modeling, and it's like, okay, but how do you know that that specific genre of 3D modeling is going to be relevant to games, right? Because 3D modeling for VFX is going to be very different than 3D modeling for games, for example, because we have to be more conscious about like optimization, and we're probably going to have bigger bevel sizes, all that kind of stuff. That is all specific for games. But if you just go on YouTube and you type in like, oh, 3D modeling in Blender, you are not going to find like the most relevant stuff for games specifically. So that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to make a full first iteration is going to be self-taught course, and then after that I'll be jumping in as like the main instructor to do group lessons and basically turn that into like an online academy. So that's the current goal of what we are doing. And I think, let me see, these are like some of the lessons. Introduction to Unreal, color theory. We have like a bunch of like, environment lighting, texturing fundamentals, Unreal Engine materials, terrain creation. Like all those things are going to be covered. And this is just a sample of the ambition that we have for it, right? Again, everything that you see here is very, very work in progress. So expect a lot of changes to happen. But we want to cover a lot of the aspects of what it means to be a professional game artist. So that would be the goal. That is the goal that we have. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any more questions about this, feel free to ask away. Can't wait. Yeah, me too. Me too. It's been a long time coming, and it is exciting, and it is also really stressful, because it's like a massive thing. And honestly, yeah, how should I say this? It's almost like it's all or nothing, right? If this doesn't really work out for us, well, for me specifically, we're gonna have to make it work somehow. That's basically what it comes down to. Because we invested like a lot of resources into this. But yeah, I'm excited to announce it though. I am very confident about the quality that's on display. All the people that we've had on to teach all the things that they're doing are honestly people that are really, really good at what they do. That's a good question, Carla. When will it be ready? So the current idea is that after the team challenges are done, we want to start out with an early access period where you can already, we're going to start out with a small group, early access, do a lot of testing and a lot of feedback with them, and really polish especially the core skills track, right? Because we want to have that really, really well done. And then we continue on with the next phase of the project, where if we know that that is done, if we know that all the people that we have on have shared their feedback and they're really happy with it, we're going to open it to more and more people. So I'm assuming, and this is an assumption, I don't know what the actual timeline is going to be. In May, we are going to be, let me double check here. So I'm assuming like mid-May or end of May, we are going to go into early access. We'll start inviting people, or maybe during the course of May. And then around, currently what the timeline looks like is that around June, I want to start out with my own first iteration of group lessons using this curriculum that we're building as the basis, right? It will still mean that I need to build like a bunch of content on top of it too. But that is the current idea. So May will start early access period. June, I will jump into this full time as well and start doing group lessons, building like a bunch of content for it more, to hopefully then, yeah, this is where the timeline gets tricky. I would hope to, let's say around, I don't know, maybe a decent amount of time later, I would then want to do like a full 1.0 release. But that timeline is going to be tricky because it depends on what we want to do. Because right now we have the core skills track, we have foliage, and then we have art fundamentals. Art fundamentals, I want to do a lot of work on. There's still something missing though. I want to make a track specifically for, I don't know what we're going to call it yet, but I'm just thinking out loud that I kind of want to call it the, I don't know, environment art for games or something like that, or level art, or I don't know how I'm going to call it yet, but this would be looking into all the specifics of what you will actually be doing as an environment artist in the industry, which means how do you make collisions? How do you build an nav mesh? How do you work around the nav mesh? How do you set dress for games? How do you work with the level design block out? All those things, because that is where the real juice is for me. A lot of the core skills you can already learn yourself from, like, I don't know, YouTube channels, right? The stuff that I just pointed at is so niche that that a lot of people just don't put it on YouTube because it doesn't matter to them, right? Or it doesn't matter to like the algorithm, I would say. And that's the stuff that I'm really excited about, because that's honestly the stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis. So I do want to build that stuff. Like, I do want to build that track too, but that's going to depend on like how much time that's going to take. So hopefully August, September will be like the full 1.0 release, and it will open it to the public. That would be like my rough estimate right now. Hello, Shitty Podcast. Good to see you. You're just saying it's looking really good. Oh, thank you. And then Stephanie is saying excited for it as well. Yeah, there's also, we're going to be talking about your work in just a bit, Stephanie. But it brings up an interesting point. One of the things that we're currently doing is that most of it is supposed to be style agnostic, which means that, you know, with modeling, we don't really care if you want to model something realistic or stylized, which is good to a certain degree. What we want to do at a certain point is then we build like small lessons that we can attach to the bigger lessons. If you then want to take it one step further, and then you want to know what like stylized modeling is, right? Or stylized texturing, right? And that would be another way that we can build out the curriculum over time. But that means that we need to talk to a whole host of different people. I need to basically rope in like a bunch of my friends that do like really cool stylized stuff, and then have them build like really cool content for it as well. But how that's going to work, I have no clue yet. I mean, I have ideas, and we just need to properly test it. Beauty is saying, any idea on the pricing model yet? I'm going back and forth. So the current idea is that it will be a higher tier on the subscription level, right? But there's still a thought in me that wants to make it like a one-time payment too. So that if you if you have the disposable income and you really want to take it to the next level, that you can just say like, hey, look, I'm just gonna buy it all, get access for all time, and that's the way that you do things, right? Or if you have less income, or you're from a region with like less disposable income or something like that, we need to see if we can attract those people too, right? But yeah, the current idea is that we would have like a higher tier, and then with the one-time payment stuff, I'm not too sure how we're going to do that or what the pricing will be. And the exact pricing, I also don't know yet, because we want to build in future potential as well with that too, right? Because the pricing basically dictates how aggressive we can be in investing back into the platform, right? So yeah, we will have to see. It's not that easy to find like these more advanced things online. That's true. Yeah. Why not both? Well, no, here's the thing, right? Like we want to do both, but then how do you balance the prices between the two? Right? Because that's where a lot of research needs to happen, right? We can't just be like, I don't know. And honestly, this is what I've been doing up until this point, right? It's like, yeah, I kind of have like a rough idea of the numbers, so we're probably going to slap this price on it. I do not want to do that with this, because for the longest time, this is going to give you like a peek behind the curtain, right? For the longest time, the pricing of the things that we were doing didn't make sense. Like, didn't make sense at all. And to give you like an either, like we're pulling back like all the curtains now. Is that there's a reality of my how should I say this? So if I want to transition into doing this full time, there needs to be an income for me to live off from, right? The last couple of years, what I've done is basically run the company at a deficit and invested my own money into it, right? Which was by design, right? So I'm not trying to guilt trip or anyone like that. That is not the point of this conversation. It is more like that was by design, but now we need to look at it in a different way, where it's like, okay, we've made all these investments. How are we gonna be able to make like a proper foundation for like a company out of this, right? A one-time payment would be awesome, and then any updates would be a smaller add-on price would be fantastic. Users can then buy those add-ons that are relevant to what they want. That is gonna add like a lot of overhead to the way that we need to structure our content, right? Which is a good idea by itself. And we definitely talked about this too, where, for example, if we have these roadmaps, right? What if a person only wants like to learn about foliage? Can they then purchase that by itself? But that means that we need to make the content in such a way that it can be separated out, and that we can separately deliver that by itself, right? Which is again a whole separate topic, right? Because sometimes you have like really good ideas, but then the feasibility might not be there, right? But it is a good proposal though. I'm not opposed. Well, we will take the ideas on. That's what I'll say. I'm trying to be very specific with the words that I use here. To be honest, I have zero disposable income, so I hope it's affordable. Well, if you have zero disposable income, then nothing is going to be affordable, right? Isn't that the definition of that? But it definitely looks like a ton of value, and the price should reflect that. Pricing is always a tricky one to decide on. Yeah. So here's the thing, right? There is... How should I say this? Like, the way that we've done things up until this point is we've tried to build Beyond Extent as a affordable option that is going for scale, right? So that means that to make the financials work to the degree that we want to do, right? We would need more people. But that adds a lot of complexity to it too, because how do you attract like a lot of people to stay for a long time, right? So then you need to continuously build things that keep those people and relevant resources for those people too, right? But the reality is that from what I've seen over time is that people will come and go, right? So how do you keep building resources and keep making it financially viable to keep building those resources, right? Because, for example, an example could be we have Whip Wednesday, we have portfolio reviews, we have, I don't know, let's say we also have fake interviews, we also have CV reviews, we also have like all this other stuff, right? That all sounds good in terms of keeping it relevant to people, but how do you then make that financially work for someone who's only paying like €5 a month, right? That makes no sense. Because then we start adding more content to it, and the only reason why we would stay afloat is because we rely on people not making use of those resources so that other people can. Right? Because let's say we have like 250 members now. If everyone starts taking part in Whip Wednesday, I'm fucked. That is the reality of it, right? But that sort of thinking is not a good way to like build a sustainable system around, right? Because then what if you have like a really busy month and let's say like, I don't know, like 100 people decide to then partake in Whip Wednesday, right? That'll be crazy. A long feedback session? Yeah. And I'm being like really open about this, right? Because I don't mind. I do this with the team as well. I try to do that as much as possible. Because this is the stuff that I think about a lot, right? Because the way that you adjust your pricing has different incentives for people, right? Because even for our side, let's say we do a subscription, right? Subscription only. If we go with that idea, that is not, there's an annoyance for people, right? Because it's another subscription service, and we know that there's like a negative connotation with like adding another subscription to your already burgeoning wallet of subscriptions, right? Which I get. However, I would make the argument that if you have a subscription that has a chance to give you a better job in the future, that is probably the one that is worth paying. But that is my personal opinion, right? Because that is for the individual to decide. What I was saying there is not only annoying for the person who is adding the subscription to their wallet, there's also an expectation that if you have a subscription from our side, that we keep building content. Which means that we build the incentive for our side to keep adding content. And what if at a certain point we think that like, hey, this is good, right? Like the course that we build is actually pretty good and stable. But then there's more and more people paying for a subscription, so we need to add content. What do we do then, right? At a certain point, like that's not going to happen for a long time, but it can have a negative effect as well. Yeah, I really like the server. It's not too overly busy, is Lily saying. This is another thing, right? If we want to make the economy of scale work, right? Which currently, if you keep prices really cheap, that means that you're going to be looking at a volume instead, right? So if we want to make this like really valuable for like the people that are working on this, right? So myself, Sunny, and Josh, like if we make that really sustainable for them, that means that we need to look for more people. Or we do the opposite and we go way higher in pricing. I mean, way higher is probably an overestimation, but we go higher in pricing, right? So those are the two levers that we can pull, right? Either we go for like less people and more value per person, or we go for more people and then hopefully like that spreads it to like lower pricing, right? Because it is really difficult to have a small server that is like really low income, like really low literal subscription prices, and then make it still sustainable for, let's say, 3 people in this case, right? And that's sort of the dilemma that I had to deal with from the beginning, right? Because I mean, there are other levers that we can pull, right? But they're just not sustainable. So for example, what I mean by that is we could look for sponsorship, right? So that not all of our income comes from the people that are subscribing. However, if the industry goes into the shitter and they're all pulling back investment, we are attached to the whims of the industry, right? Which is not what I want to do because the industry is not stable enough for that. So that was the conscious decision to not really pursue that, right? I think that can work for like a one-time thing, right? If you organize like a one-time event, I think that works fine. But to do something consistently, that's when it becomes really tricky. Yeah. I hope you like this like very, very in-depth business-oriented discussion of like some of these things. The reason why I love being open about this is because hopefully it also shines a light onto, let's say you want to build your own thing, that these are like some of the business decisions that people talk about, but there's no like real openness about this at times. Let's see. As for me, I can't subscribe because I don't have much income. If I have steady income in the future, I would definitely love to join all the time because you provide very valuable resources. Yeah, thank you. And that is also like a part of our design, right? Like, how do you balance the free resources that we offer versus like the paid resources that we're making, right? And if you've been paying attention, it started out with a lot of free stuff in the beginning. Then that generated our income. Now we're building like the academy and all that kind of stuff. We are gonna have to swing the pendulum back a little bit at a certain point and then offer more free resources that we can use that as marketing basically, right? Because yeah, even that balance is pretty tricky sometimes. Mikhail is saying, I think a lot of the people might enjoy the Discord more since it's not as busy as some of the really big communities. Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that we need to take into account, right? Let's see, but thank you so much for the good questions though. So and the ideas as well. I really appreciate it. Weekly tips are still going strong. Yeah. I mean, and that was, in hindsight, that was like the best investment that I've made, right? Because they are like an endless source, like an endless resource that is just relevant. For the most part, I think a lot of it is still relevant, right? And then sometimes I filter out some of the ones that aren't, but for the most part, they're still relevant, which is good. Which is again, it's really, really interesting for all of you, right? Because those weekly tips that I've written, that's from like 8 years ago, right? When I started doing that. So yeah. I have been really finding find relevant information out of the handbook for the price of the base tier is really great value. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also one of the things that I personally wanted to do, right? Is I want you to come into the community. And sure, the community is one thing, and you can have Whip Wednesday and portfolio reviews and all that kind of stuff, right? But that handbook has so much information and is so widespread at this point that I hope that people see that we focus on value, right? Because I know that we're talking a lot about price, but I mean, yeah, I hope that the price weighs out the value that we deliver. Where is my chat? Because I need to scroll up a little bit. But yeah, thank you all for the good questions. And and the good insights. Let's see. So Idris, we already talked about that one. So Justin is saying, I think as long as the pricing is less than courses like Think Tank or a master's is reasonable. Places like that hard finances if you're limited, but in the end, it's up to you into how much. Yeah. I'm very conscious of the resources, the spend for like some of these like bigger universities, right? I've been really open about this, right? I mean, it's no surprise. I'm from Belgium. I had to pay like 1,000 euros a year for my education, which was really good, right? So my benchmark is not necessarily Think Tank or all these other like well-known ones that are like really expensive to go for. My benchmark is that, right? Because I don't have debt. I don't want people to go into debt to learn the stuff that we're doing. But it also needs to be financially viable, because without government support or anything like that, making something that you only pay like 1,000 a year for the content that we're trying to build is also going to be really tricky. Right? Well, it's easier. Let me explain. It's easier for people that are self-taught, right? Because if you don't have to dedicate like a lot of your resources, like a lot of your time, then it makes sense, right? Because then you can rely on volume again. Whereas, let's say if I want to learn these group sessions, they have to be more expensive just because I'm putting in my dedicated time, right? And that time that I'm spending on group lessons is going to be taken away from me actually making more content for the courses, right? So it's that balance of, there is value in having a teacher, but then how do you balance that with, let's say, a university course here in Belgium where you only pay like 1,000 a year, right? For like a person living in Belgium, right? I think it's like 7,000 if you come from like internationally. So I'm very aware of the prices. I don't want people to go into debt just to get the sort of education that I want to give them, right? I think it's going to be tricky to find a balance there and to make it sustainable over the long period. But that is not really what I'm in for. MSR is saying, I like open finances talk, gives you a better understanding of things you are struggling with, and also trying to offer actual value for as many as people as possible. Yeah, and that is something that I'm not really that good at, right? I love doing things by myself. I'm very independent, and sometimes you need help because otherwise it's not going to work. And I think these talks, they hopefully shine a light on on the back end of it, right? One of the big things, if we're talking about like open discussions about this anyway, a lot of people will know like the annoying thing that happened like a couple of months ago when we migrated our backend services, which meant that you had to like re-sign up and all that kind of stuff. It was really annoying, and yeah, I found it really annoying as well. But one lesser known thing with that whole debacle was that we lost 50% of our income in that month. And we are still on the way up to like regaining it. We have not recovered from that yet. So that, all the discussions that we had, right? Like all the context that we just talked about, basically got exacerbated by the thing that happened with that, right? So yeah. But yeah, I don't want to turn this into a pity party, right? But that's just the reality of running a business. But that did mean that like, hey, look, like first of all, that shouldn't happen again, because I don't have to do that migration again. But that did mean that, for example, what that meant is that we still need to deliver workshops, right? 2 workshops a month is my minimum guarantee. I told this to Josh as well. And Josh is very aware of it, and he's been kicking ass on the workshops. Like, I'm really happy to have Josh on the team. So again, nothing here is his fault, right? But it's like, okay, if we want to deliver those resources and we want to keep delivering them, that means that those workshops are going to be paid by me, not by Beyond Extent, right? For the time being, until we recover from what is happening with them, right? Or like what happened with the migration of all the data. Again, this is the weird thing. Like, I think it's really nice to be open about like all this stuff, but I don't want this to turn into a pity party, right? Because that is a choice. That is a choice that I've made with this, and it's like you can decide like, okay, do we sacrifice the workshops, right? Do we sacrifice the people, give them less value, even though they signed up to get like 2 workshops a month, right? Or do we find a way to make it work, right? Oh man, that sucks to hear. Yeah, thank you, Sarah Papa. I mean, we'll be fine, right? We've made it work. I have been pretty good, I would say, with saving up for a rainy day, so that when that rainy day comes, we have a thing to lean on, right? Which has been very helpful. So we are not struggling by a long shot, but it is really scary when you see something that you've built so hard on, because the thing is, like, you build up for like, let's say 6 months or like, let's say a year to get to like a higher number of people that support you, right? To then see it cut in half, like in a month, basically put us back like a year. And that is just like the more painful thing. But enough said about that, because it turns into a pity party. I don't want that. Hello, Leah. Good to see you. Justin is saying, meanwhile, in the UK, that'll be 9K a year for 3 years as an undergrad, 12 to 18 for a master's, please. Don't want to even look at American pricing for courses. Yeah. This is the thing, right? Like, if you want to build yourself a benchmark for like, okay, what is like a reasonable price to ask for like an online academy, let's say, right? And if you know that you have like really good quality and you're working with like industry professionals, which is already a massive multiplier on top of what most universities do out there, right? Then yeah, looking at some of the prices of, let's say, like Gnomon, I think if you want to graduate from Gnomon, it's like 250,000 or something like that. Like you said, in the UK, like 9K a year. I think they want to crank that up to like 12 or something like that, right? In a couple of years. It is, yeah, it's crazy. And then, yeah, don't even get me started on a master's, because I think a master's in like games is still, yeah, a waste of time. Just outright. I don't know why you would need a master's. Like, honestly, yeah, it is a pain. But yeah, we will see. We will see where we go with the pricing. The thing that I will do is like, I'll keep everything up to date. A lot of it is going to be clear out of the early access period, right? Because then we get like feedback from like a bunch of people. So I think that's going to be a really interesting time for myself and the rest of the team to see where we want to go with that. Hello, Darpan. And Darpan is saying Gnomon is so expensive. Yes. Yeah. But that's the thing, right? They relied on their brand recognition, right? A lot of people knew Gnomon because they did like all the Gnomon DVDs. This is like early days, right? Because I even knew about Gnomon because they did like these like 3D DVDs that they did, right? They were doing some like really, really cool stuff. And I mean, they still do that. But yeah, I think the financial logistics of it now make less sense. Because if you see what the industry is going through and where the jobs are being displaced to, I think the financials start making less and less sense. So I'm curious to see how it's going to affect them specifically over time. But yeah, the little I have been here has been awesome. Just to be seen by a community with a passion for what you have has kept me going. I will be supporting for a long, long time. Thank you, Marius. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate like everyone for being here and all the support, right? Again, the previous conversation wasn't supposed to be a pity party. I genuinely I genuinely appreciate everyone's time and effort and all the work and all the support that everyone's been putting in. Because there's different people in our community, right? You have the people that lurk and they don't ever say a thing, but then they still like talk to their friends about it. You have those people, really appreciate them. You have people that are really vocal about it too. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone for all the support. And yeah, my hope is that the value has been there, right? And that it hopefully helps you in your journey, because that's the goal. That's still the goal. Justin is asking, oh yeah, and for people that are jumping in, because we have like more people than we did in the beginning now, if you have any questions about game art, environment art, your portfolio, whatever it may be, let me know. And we'll dive into a portfolio from Stephanie in just a bit to have a look at another one. Let's see. Do you think mentorships these days are a lot more valuable in terms of reaching the industry benchmark despite its own limits? Been contemplating. Yeah, it is a good question, right? It depends on the cost of the mentorship, but in general, a couple of things that I've seen, right? Most unis, and I'm talking especially about unis in, let's say we're gonna go broad strokes, right? Most unis that I've seen in the UK and in Europe, they rely too much on people that have no experience in the industry, right? Some unis are changing that actively, and I see them doing that. And it's not easy for them to do that, to build a new network from scratch with people that have been in the industry. Yeah, that is a difficult thing on top of your, like your other responsibilities as a teacher, right? But that is where the value is, right? Because if you don't have a bridge to the industry, then how do you know what's relevant into what you're teaching, right? And that's where I think mentorships can have a lot of value, right? Because those mentorships are from people that are most of the time still working in the industry. And that's where you want to get the knowledge from, right? So I think that's always been the big bonus. The difficult thing in that comparison is that it makes an assumption that you already know what you want to be doing. And that is the big thing, right? A uni still prepares you. Like, for example, I use myself for an example, right? I wanted to become a concept artist. I went to uni and I came out an environment artist, right? That happened because of uni, right? If I didn't have uni, I was probably still doing like 2D drawings and probably not being very good at them, and I wouldn't become like a concept artist. That is why I had uni. That's why uni was really good. And if you don't know what you want to be doing, or you haven't done your proper research and you haven't dedicated like a bunch of your time into this field yet, then knowing which mentorship to pick, that is really difficult. Because if you then treat mentorships as like, hey, I don't know what I want to be doing, so I'm going to just go on a mentorship and I'm going to explore stuff, that makes no sense either, right? Then it's probably better to just go for a uni. Because when I talk about like that makes no sense either, probably financially too, right? If you keep stacking up mentorships, they're going to be like probably, depending on where you get them from, like more expensive in the end for a year. So that's the thing. There's a difference there where if you have already tried uni and you've already done like a bunch of stuff and you know where you want to go, but you're not hitting the quality bar yet, mentorships are awesome. If you are still lost in the sauce and you don't know what you want to be doing, then yeah, uni might be more a thing for you. Hello, George. Good to see you, buddy. My old uni just hires graduate students that teach. Yeah, there's a lot of unis doing this now. And again, not that it's like a bad thing for a student to take that job, right? Because if you look at the landscape of like work, then yeah, it makes sense that you as a student coming out and looking at this industry, you're just like, oh my god, like it's on fire. Like I'll just take this job, which even in most cases, from the people that I know that have done the exact same thing, it probably pays even better than the games industry for less amount of work. So it's like the incentives are there, right? So I get it. It's just in the long term, from like a uni standpoint, it makes no sense because you erode the knowledge, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing that is happening in the industry, right? If you keep firing a bunch of people, at a certain point, people with all the knowledge are going to be leaving too, and then what the hell are you going to be doing with your in-house engine that is built upon the people that are no longer there, right? That's the issue. Same thing happens in unis too. You have to be very careful about how you balance the short term versus the long term. Lily is saying, I feel like uni college focus are really broad. I had character and animation, and with a mentorship, you can get something with focus, like environment art. Yes. Yep. 100% agree. I think you get the most out of mentorships once you have good foundational skills, says Lloyd. Yeah, I agree. Yep. And good to see you too, buddy. It's been a while since I've seen you in the chat. But yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's really hard to know what you want to get out of a mentorship if you don't even know what you're doing at that point, right? That's a good point. There are more concept art jobs now than environment art jobs. That makes no sense. Just in terms of, well, it might make sense temporarily, maybe, but that makes no sense in terms of how the industry works, right? Because if you look at games, usually you have one. Let me see. What would the ratio be? I'm just going to throw a number out there, right? But you have 5, depending on the project, you have like 5 to 7 environment artists compared to 1 concept artist. Roughly, right? It depends on games and studios and all that kind of stuff, right? But if I were to slap a number on it, it's like 1 to 5. So temporarily that might be true, but yeah. And also it depends on the stage of the project too. Not forgetting that. What do you think are reasonable prices for mentorships? Let's say 4 times 1 hour sessions. So how much did I ask again? Let me see. I think it's like 450 that I ask, right? I think calculated on like the landscape, I think that's like a very reasonable price. I would say if I want to turn that into, well, here's the thing, right? Like you have to keep in location, because if you're from the US and you're trying to serve like US customers, your price is going to be higher, right? Let's say what you can do is, let's say you live in, I don't know, a very cheap country, right? And then your target audience is American customers. That means that if you ask like, I don't know, if you have like 2 mentors for a month, you can be set for the rest of the month. You don't have to do anything else, right? So there's a lot of like world economics that come into play. Whereas you need to look at what your target audience is, right? Because if your price is going to be higher, then it's going to attract people with more disposable income, which is usually the US, right? However, if you want to attract people from, like, let's say Europe, your prices have to be lower than mentorships in the US. So that's what it depends on. But yeah, that's why my price is lower than what you would see in mentorships from like other places, let's say. And that's why I went for like 400 to 500. It's been my range, something like that. Because what happens with a mentorship, like, for sure it's 4 times 1 hour sessions, right? But there's a lot of prep that goes into it too, or a lot of follow-up, right? Because most of these mentorships, they have like, oh, ask me a question whenever you want, right? And then sometimes you have to engage with people outside of your mentorship, which is fine, right? I think that should be allowed, but that needs to be built into the calculation too, from a mentor perspective. Lily is saying, oh, first of all, Denise, good to see you. Lovely to have you back. Sorry, Darpan is saying, I also heard that many big studios go to hire at uni, which is like their biggest selling point at this point, where jobs are very scarce. Scarce. What's your thought about this? It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. As a uni, you want to have good relationships with studios that you can reliably put people in, right? You need to have that. Because otherwise, like, what is the point of just like throwing people into the wild and like letting them do their own thing, right? I think it's one of those things where actually a lot of unis are like underestimating the connection that they need to have with students, with studios, right? My school was pretty good at this. Like at the end, I don't know what the timing of it was, but like in your third year, there was like this job market fair. It's still happening now. They turned it kind of into like an industry event, which is really cool to see. But it basically was a way to attract studios to come over and then to see who was ready to get into the industry, right? And then they could already get hired like on the spot most of the time, which is cool. I think you need more of that stuff because the link between the two is what makes a good industry, right? Because if a studio is just in its bubble and it's not really engaging with like the upcoming talent, then the likeliness of them just hiring like anyone that they want from outside the country is not really strengthening the bonds of the games industry within a given country, right? So the connection between universities from a country need to be connected with the industry from that country as well, as much as they can. And sometimes the balance is a little bit out of whack, right? I feel like for the longest part, that has been the case in Belgium. We have a really, really good school, like internationally recognized, and people come from international to like get educated at this school. But then we have the opposite issue where the industry here is just not ready to accept the amount of people that we put out there, right? And that's an issue there as well. But that is a broad issue. Whereas it feels like in the UK, and again, this is from like a very high level view, the UK has a lot of studios, and that means that a lot of the universities can put out a lot of people, which means that the quality bar of those people being released out of uni is going to be way lower than anywhere else. I don't know if that is like correlation and causation and all that kind of stuff, but it's really interesting to see that where you have a lot of studios, the quality of what the universities are putting out there in terms of like graduates seems to be lower. And I don't know if I have like any other examples, but I don't know. I just made that connection now, and it seems to be pretty interesting to find like data to support it, if that makes sense. That would make a lot of sense, right? Because if the industry is doing good and everyone's hiring, like you can just throw people out into the job force and they'll get a job anyway, right? It's just that in my opinion, I see a lot more concept artist application than 3D environment artist applications around. Yeah, I mean, that could be the case, yeah. I know that I came on very strong there, but yeah. That could be the case. I feel like both have pros and cons. At uni, you have a network of classmates and industry and teachers and such. Yeah, I come from a perspective that I didn't really engage with a lot of that stuff at uni. For me, uni was more like, hey, you need to take this shit seriously, and you need to, you need to take this seriously. That was like the biggest thing that I learned. And then maybe the networking effect becomes more apparent over the years, but I've not really personally gained or seen like a lot of benefit from that specific networking effect. I've always, in a weird way, built like my own networks. If that makes sense. Like through my blog, through Beyond Extend, through all that stuff. Again, I'm probably more independently minded. My first school was pretty bad at that, even though a good amount of successful studios got started by students from the university. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that also needs to happen, right? Like, you need to have a thriving community. And I think that's really interesting here in Belgium. It seems like there's more and more indie studios that are popping up too, which is good. But yeah, I wonder, and this is me like questioning things out loud, right? Like, I wonder if, let's say, you have a sort of good indie scene, is that even relevant for the government to kind of make a big deal out of it so that they can change their funding structure, you know? Because, for example, I think something like Larian did here in Belgium, I wonder how big that impact was on the funding structure for the rest of the games industry here in Belgium. Because until since 2022, we didn't have, like, well, there's a thing called like a tax shelter here that was like available for like musicians and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, but that wasn't active until 2022 for games here in Belgium, which kind of shows you that like we were still sort of lagging behind in seeing games as like a future potential, right? Which is pretty interesting, even though like Larian is here and they made Baldur's Gate 3, right? So it's interesting. So I wonder how big that impact is on how a government sees like where it needs to send its funding. Because even from the outside looking at Sweden, for example, right? It seems like they have more incentives and more ways to fund games than we do. Again, from the outside looking in, right? But it seems like they have done a better job at like long-term nurturing their industry. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about all that stuff, right? Because I'm not a government employee, so no clue about that, like how that works. But from the outside, it's very interesting to look at the different dynamics that different countries have. Hold on, let me. Do. Right, Stephanie, you got an AI question. Worried about AI taking 3D jobs in the future? What should we do to stay employable in the future without having to do a career change? So, the games industry is always going to go through changes. It's always going to do, and it's going to continue to keep doing that. Because we are very technology minded, right? What I can always say is always explore new tools, right? And then you can make up your own mind to see if they're relevant to what you want to do, or just to see what the impact is going to be. I have tried some of these tools myself. I am totally not impressed with what they're doing. I think a lot of it is wrapped up into marketing and hype and the fear of missing out, right? If you aren't doing AI stuff, then you don't have a job in the future. I do not believe in that emotional distortion, right? So whenever I see that, I'm always like, oh, okay, cool. But like, that's not really new, right? It's an industry trying to take your emotions hostage just for the benefit of like growing their user base. I would honestly just see it from like, okay, use it, see actually what it can do from like a tool perspective, right? So because I would always encourage you to like look at things with your own eyes, make up your own mind, and then see what it can do, right? And then decide what you want to do. Because if you ask me what we should do to stay employable in the future without having to do a career change, my answer is not going to be AI. My answer is going to be probably look into like how you can enhance your creativity. What I mean by that is, let's say if a lot of the big companies are going to be using AI to streamline their, we're talking hypotheticals, right? We're talking hypotheticals. I don't want to go into like the AI rabbit hole because it's honestly It's tiring. It's tiring because I feel like a lot of it comes from, yeah, just the emotional distortion that the industry is doing, right? But what I was gonna say is, if you want to prepare yourself more for the future, is if your vision of the future is to assume that, like, let's say big companies are going to be using AI, right? How are you going to remain relevant? What AI is really good at is gonna be really good at giving you the most average thing from like all the possible scenarios, right? So that means that the future for me with games lies in more creativity. Maybe in the long term, that means that you'll not only be doing environment art, but you'll be doing your own games. Maybe, right? That can be your choice. That can be your road. But it can also be that, sure, if you want to keep working in the industry, and let's say they do use AI for some reason, even though I have still yet to see like actual implemented solutions of 3D AI, right? Let's say if that's the future, then you will just have to adopt it as a tool. I think, yeah. But this all hinges on if we are even going to be using it as a tool. I think we undersell how much an artist does. Yeah. Clean, efficient modeling, efficient UVs, smart texturing, setting it up in the game, keep everything optimized, working, fixing bugs. Dude, yeah. Set dressing, making sure that the nav mesh works, doing collision optimization. Like, there's so much stuff that we do that I think a lot of it just hinges on like this like all dominating vision of what AI can do. And I feel like if that's supposed to be future is going to be true, then we are talking about like a different reality where like, why would I even need a person to run a games company, right? It can literally just spit out a game. And if that happens, what is reality then looking like, right? But again, that is like sci-fi. I don't really like to focus on that stuff because it doesn't feel like it's relevant, even though everyone is really trying their best to make it seem like that is the reality, right? It's just, yeah, it's a little bit tiring. Lydia's saying Sora shut down and a lot of AI focused companies are losing money, to be honest. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, again, I don't want to turn this into like AI talk because, yeah. Aren't businesses backtracking after 6 months? They finally realized AI isn't what they thought it was, and it's actually harming their business. I mean, that is a part of the issue, right? Like, no one, even the creators behind like most of AI and LLMs and all that kind of stuff, they don't know what it's doing. So, right? So if they don't know what it's doing, it's almost like, and this is an age-old thing, right? If you are a freelancer and a client will ask you this, a client will ask you to do this, they have no idea what they're asking because you are the professional, right? You are the person who knows how this works and what needs to be done and all the steps taken, and you can foresee what the permutations are going to be like in the future, right? Because you've done this a bunch of times. Same thing happens with business people, right? They don't know in essence like how to make like a 3D asset, right? So they just see like, oh, okay, like let's just throw this thing against it, and then it doesn't work. Whoops, I guess we'll have to rehire people. Same thing, and they're driven by the same notions, right? Like everyone is an emotional creature. Like they're just going to be like, oh my god, like it seems like all the money is moving there. Like we need to also do something like this because otherwise we're going to be losing out. So yeah. Yeah. I do want to say, like, I do not lie awake from like what is happening with AI. I think it's pretty interesting to follow along, right? But I don't think it's going to have as dramatic of an effect as we all think it has. And I think if there's a curve, but I don't know what the name of the curve was. Like we always over anticipate like how drastically something is going to change, and then it's like, oh shit, it's actually not going to change all that much. And then over the long term, slow changes happen, right? Yeah. Tech art is a huge field. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's where, yeah. Here's the thing, right? Like, people have been promising like procedural level generation and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? We still need to have artistic hands doing it because it looks like ass, you know? Like, you still need to have a person with artistic insight and creativity to actually build things themselves by hand, right? And I think the same thing is going to happen here too. Does that mean that some shuffling around might happen over the long term? Potentially, yeah. But that's nothing new. I don't think that's nothing new. McFall saying, I saw a Corridor Digital video where they made or have an AI tool that cuts people out of green screen very quickly compared to the tedious work needed by hand, but that's not 3D though. Yeah, but that's just a tool, right? I mean, if you use Canva, so the reason why I love using Canva is oh, note to self, removing a message doesn't remove it from Teams reading list. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just have like OBS open. It doesn't show me deleted messages. But yeah, that's why I love using Canva, you know? God, the benefit of not having to do like manual masking is so good. I can just for the team challenges, right? When we want to do like a presentation with like where I show off like all the individual mentors and all that kind of stuff, we would honestly not be able to do that presentation if it wasn't for Canva, because it's so good at cleaning up like backgrounds. It's literally a single button, and 95% of the time it does it flawlessly. It's perfect. It's honestly really good. And that also has AI built into it, right? So I'm all for that kind of stuff. Oh my God, it's so good. But yeah, that is just a tool, right? That is just a tool. But yeah, let's switch it on from all this AI stuff, and let's talk about the actual real world. Okay, let's talk about some real people here. We're going to be talking about Stephanie's work. So Stephanie's Arndorfer's work. Let me scoot this in. Let me do this so that we can see the whole thing. Okay, maybe let's do one more question, because we had a question about tech art, right? Sorry, Stephanie. Speaking of tech art, what would be the role of tech art in environments? I mean, do they need to know code and develop some kind of tools? Yeah, I think if you're gonna switch from like environment art to tech art, most likely your entry point will be tools. Because a tech artist is the bridge between a programmer and an artist, right? Usually what you will be doing is just making tools for the environment art team with the support of the programmers, right? But that has a wide range of options, right? And do you need to know code for that? Most likely, yeah. Usually Python is a good thing to get into. I think Python is pretty universally adopted across all companies. Yeah, Python is good for Maya tools, stuff like that. Yeah, that's probably the recommendation I would give in terms of tooling. Like, if you want to get into tech art, Python is a good entry. Yeah, cool. Stephanie, let's have a look. 3D artist at Next Games, a Netflix game studio. Okay, is that the new studio already? Is that the one that we congratulated you for in the beginning? Hello and welcome. I'm a 3D environment artist specializing in environment art and prop art with a background in graphic design and illustration. Graduated from creative media and game technologies program from Breda University at Applied Sciences with honors. Worked with a variety of clients. Cool. This is cool. I like that you mentioned that. Very relevant, right? Deeply fascinates me seeing artwork come to life by code. Is seeing artwork come to life by code when playing a game. The most important reason why I'm here is because I believe that by working in a team on the same project is one of the most wonderful things, since you can combine everyone's individual talents, and out of that fusion comes really stunning, something really stunning will be created. Don't hesitate to contact me. I'm already looking forward to working on amazing projects together. Okay, this is a little bit lengthy, right? What I like about this is this, right? This section here is very relevant, because it's just, you know, sometimes it feels like bragging, but this is what you want to do, right? Like on a portfolio, it's like, hey, I work for these clients, and that might open some doors, right? That is the reason why I also put, like, you know, ex Ubisoft and ex Playground Games and, well, current Playground Games and all those things, right? Because when people associate you with those names, that will automatically open some doors because they expect some sort of standard and knowledge from you already, right? Which is good. So this is good. This is probably less relevant. This is probably something that I would put on your CV instead, right? Because this, honestly, this paragraph here is way more impactful to me as an employer than this one. That's what I would say. Maybe this becomes even so important that maybe I would move it up. I don't know where though. If this goes, then potentially that lands in a good position. Yeah, this can be shortened, right? We're gonna go into like very nitty gritty, but like this can definitely be shortened. And just, yeah, this section can be like 1 or 2 sentences, right? Like this is one of the big things, like the biggest thing that I believe in is this. And then looking forward to working together, right? Short and sweet, cleaning it up. And I think that's gonna be nice. Because what you want to keep in mind is always people's time, right? Usually when people do show more, they will probably read until this point, maybe here, and that's it. And then they'll just like look at your work. So try to optimize this as much as possible. Right, let's have a look at your about page. World of Tanks. Star Stable Horses. Awesome. I have heard, this is like an entire genre that I'm completely oblivious to, but I've heard that horse games are freaking doing the rounds. I honestly need to look into horse games just to know what people are going crazy about. Cool. Yeah, this is cool. I got an overview of like the games that you worked on, which is cool. I like it. A pretty extensive work history, which is cool. I like it. So you worked in Netherlands as well. Oh yeah, because you graduated from Breda, right? And then you moved back to AT is Austria, right? I'm assuming, which is interesting. School, so you're working fully remote. Nice. Cool. I think this is good, right? This gives me a good introduction to what you've done. This especially, I know that like there can't really be a bias, or there shouldn't be a bias against like a break in your resume, right? But when I see this, I do have to say that I'm really impressed, right? I'm really impressed to see, first of all, the variety of different things that you've worked on, and also the intensity of just like really going after a job, right? It doesn't feel like there's like a lot of big breaks in here, which is good, right? Again, no bias against people who take a break. I mean, I've taken a break for like 2 years to work on Beyond Extend full time. That also probably doesn't get seen as like professional game development experience. But I'm constantly impressed at like, I guess what it's really hinting at is just like the grit, right? And the intensity and how serious you take working within games, right? That is just like, hey, look, doing this takes a bunch of work, and just like, yeah, that intensity, which I really like. So yeah, that is cool. Pretty impressed with that, which is awesome. Now we're going to see how that translates into the actual work, shall we? Bongfish is a fun name for a studio. It is. I like Bongfish. Cool. Let's see what some of the other work, right? So this is some concept art work. We're not going to be spending too much time on this. Concept art pieces. Ba-ba-bum. Yeah. It is cool to see. I would probably, I mean, I'm looking at all, right? So you have like 3D art. I don't know if that is even possible, probably like only with Pro. I don't know if you are Pro. The way that I always structured my my environment was like the landing page, literally as you look up your name, you would land on the stuff that you want to do, right? Whereas right now, I think that's like a Pro feature, but like you land here and then some of the older stuff is here. Well, it's not because it's old, it's because it's 2D stuff, right? Well, maybe, I don't know. It's a tricky one because it's honestly, it's not even that the quality of it is bad per se, right? It has dated for sure, but yeah, it is okay enough for me to still call it relevant. Also, did like ArtStation thumbnails just break? Because is it showing like the overlay on all of them still? Okay, thanks ArtStation, really helpful. Yeah. Because I mean, you do separate it here, right? Like 3D work and 2D work. But I think at this point, all of your 3D work is pretty good that like I question the validity or like the use of like your 2D work. I think in terms of transitioning into 3D work, right? This was still irrelevant. At this point, I don't know if it still needs to be up here. But again, I'm not saying that you need to remove it because it's honestly not that not that bad, right? I don't know. I can't find a better word for it, but it's not like I'm like, ooh, you need to remove this. Anyway, let's have a look. 6 years ago. I'm just gonna quickly skip through some of this stuff. So this is, let's see, Star Stable, Bongfish. So this is all professional work, and then from this point on, we are going into personal work, right? I think at this point, what would be more interesting to see. McFall is saying you need to pay for Pro to get ArtStation to work correctly. Oh God, yeah, don't even get me started. But what would be more interesting is instead of 3D and 2D art, I would honestly do professional and personal work. That might be more relevant for the position that you're in right now, because no one's really going to hire you for 2D work, right? And you've done enough 3D work to showcase that you can do it both professionally and personal. So I would do that split in that way. I've personally always been a fan, because the reason why I've been a fan of that is that you can clearly showcase this is how I work in a production, right? So this is a sort of skill level that I can bring here, but this is what I want to do in a production, right? That is where your personal work comes in, because it's showcasing not only what you can do, but what you want to do in the future, right? Like that is basically what you want to be hired for. Cool. Quickly skipping through some of this stuff, because professional work, you have less of control of this, right? This looks clean. I like that you're able to showcase the UV layout and the textures too, which is really cool. I like it a lot. Looks so fun to do. Little melon water pieces. That's awesome. Trim sheet. A trim sheet. That is not trimming. Doesn't matter. You got like... Oh, you got 2 different trim sheets. Interesting. Yeah. This is... Oh, this is 2 months ago. It's a cancel project. Ah, okay. Cancel project. I don't think I've ever seen anyone post that, which is interesting. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's keep on moving on. Another cancel project. Oh, I think this might be the same one then, I'm assuming, right? Because it's sort of like the same thematic. Is it? No, maybe not. Maybe I'm reading into it. Topology for the horses. Example of trim sheets. Okay. Interesting layouts, because the reason why I look at these trim sheets weird is because you basically... Of trim sheets, I'm gonna assume that this is like a secondary trim sheet. This is not just like 2 by 1 texture, right? Because what I was gonna say is that usually with a trim sheet, you want to make sure that you can tile these sections like at least on 1 dimension, right? That's the main difference between a tileable texture and a trim sheet, is that they're supposed to be used, let's say, for a certain height, but then the width can just be like tiled endlessly, right? Which is why it's called a trim sheet. Whereas like in these guys, because you have them blocked off at the edges, that is not going to help with like the tileability of it, right? Which is interesting. Where are these used? That's just on the floor, right? I see. On the floor, it kind of makes sense because it kind of lines up with like how the panels are cut too. Anyway, this is not about the art necessarily. Ancient ruins. Cool. Nice. Doing some foliage as well. That's always good to see. Shows you like a little bit of versatility in your skill set. Some nice sculpts. Cool. Looks more like an atlas. I think the way that it was presented gave you the appearance of an atlas, but it was 2 separate trim sheets, I think. Because yeah, I mean, technically you could still use it as a trim, right? But a trim is usually just like a long strip of stuff, right? Materials from 2022. These look really fun. Looks like you had a lot of fun with these. And then 2024. Nice. These are just like fun challenges, right? I would potentially say, because the thing with materials, I'm always wondering, like, okay, how would you take it further, right? Like, if I give you this one, for example, what would you do? And that is a question that I'm asking out loud. Maybe that could be a good thing to showcase in your portfolio as well. Because these are fun little exercises to then more focus on speed, right? But they oftentimes they just lack the quality and attention to detail that you would expect from like actual materials that you would make, right? But let's continue on. Cool stuff. We've got topology, got your UV layout, which is good. Almost roughness, AO, metalness. Oh, there's 2 separate ones. In that case, it would have been good to showcase like where they are applied. For example, just doing like a little color overlay, saying like UV1 and then UV2 with a different color, something like that, right? To just make sure that like we can read it visually and that we know which thing we are looking at, right? I mean, because I can deduce, you see the lion head here. We can play like a detective game, right? But it's always better if you can lay it out in such a way that I can look with a single image and make sure that like all the context is there to require me to read it properly. One thing that I just thought about is that also, I don't know if you mentioned it here, I don't think so, the poly count, right? As in like how many tries or polys do we have for this asset? That would be a good thing to mention too. Yeah, I think in terms of presentation, this is nice. This is also for an ArtStation challenge, right? So I know that time is usually like really short for those things. Yeah. I think what I'm thinking of is that, again, with assets, I kind of want to see them in context, right? If this is like a honey extractor, I'm wondering. Oh, so it's like a backpack. Okay. Handle able to be lifted up to pump honey in the container. Oh, okay. Got it. So it kind of stings into like a hive or something like that. You pump it out of it, which is cool. I like that. The reason why I'm looking at this is just it would be cool to see if there's like any context, right? Like if it's on someone's desk or something like that, or next to like a bunch of other survival tools. I know in terms of like making stylized assets that would like blow the scope like enormously, right? But like additional context could be cool for these ones. Honeypot. Yeah. I like the way that you laid out the presentation, The sequencing makes a lot of sense. The way that you present it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's very clean. The only thing that I maybe don't like is the dark. How would I do it? So the dark background kind of reminds me of like what everyone was doing on Polycount, It was just like, I would just put like a dark background behind it, maybe like a grayscale background. But I wonder if there's like better ways to present it now. That then again gives me like a little bit more context behind it. Usually that's the view that I have, right? Like if I'm looking at how can I expand on my presentation, then I look for storytelling context, right? So if this is a honeypot, for example, this is probably gonna be in the center of like, let's say, a market town, right? This almost feels like this is gonna be like on a market and is next to a stall or something like that. And what I don't want you to model like a stall and like have like a bunch of stuff next to it, but that means just having like dirt on the floor and maybe making like a quick chair or something like that, or someone like sitting next to it or something like that, right? It gives me like a little bit of additional stuff to do. Again, this is older work, so I'm curious to see how that changes like the newer things, right? Because this is also for the challenge. Yeah, I think the execution of these pieces and the way that you present them and the sculpting that you do, really great, right? Really great. It's cool to see the UV layout and all the additional textures as well. Potentially, if we scrutinize it, there's probably a lot of optimization that can be done here, but it's okay. It's okay. It's definitely more than serviceable, right? And also, in terms of optimization, even if I want you to optimize this board, let's say in a production environment, that is so easy to do. It's going to take you like an hour to like go down. But that's cool. So that was like challenge stuff, right? Because now I'm wondering about like your personal work. Because obviously the thing is, and the same thing happens with our challenges too, right? Is that I love when people participate in our challenges. I really, really love it. But you cannot only rely on challenges to showcase, and I'm not saying that you do this, Stephanie, because we're going to go into your personal work, but just as an example for other people out there, that you cannot only rely on challenges in your portfolio, because then I'm not certain which thing you did or how you add your own artistic voice to it, right? And that's what I'm kind of looking for at this point. Like, if you had the choice of doing what you wanted to be doing, what would you be doing, right? So let's have a look. Let's dive into what you want to be doing. A concept from LOD. I loved working with LOD. It was like, I was really impressed when she like joined that frontier when we were working together. And she just came in with like this really fresh take on concept art. It's freaking awesome. Such an amazing person to work with as well. So I don't know if you ever watched this LOD, but loved working with you, and I hope you're doing well. Let's see. Interesting. Okay, so it's interesting that in this case, the presentation and the breakdown took a little bit of a backseat, right? I would say you can condense the amount of stuff that's on here. I would, for example, say this view of the card can be more to the left, and then you can add this view to the card more to the right. And that gives you like a more filled out view of like the card with multiple dimensions, right? Because I'm also thinking about this in terms of respecting the person's time who's going to be looking at it. I don't think you're doing like a lot of stuff wrong here with just like the 5 images that we see. But I would probably want to add more breakdown stuff here with like your UVs and yeah, your topology is all right, but it's still, what is the poly count like? All that kind of stuff, right? Like the data behind it. That's what I want to see. Yeah, and then showcasing like all the different UVs that you use and different texture that you use, right? And then what I would love to see from this project specifically, for example, is, let's say the first view has 2 of these cards, right? So one next to the other, which is cool to showcase. Second image is your topology with your poly count next to it. Your third image is a breakdown of all the texture sets and how you've done them. And the fourth image is your sculpt from multiple angles. And that is it. 4 really stacked images with a bunch of content. And that's what I want to see, right? Like instead of these like single images, like take a little bit of extra time to like Photoshop them out and present them really nicely next to each other. Because that is honestly what would elevate this to the next level, right? The work has been done. I can see that you had a lot of fun with it. Now I want to see that you can also take the presentation to the next level too, right? And show that off as like a skill by itself. Because you can score a lot of points with that stuff. Same thing can be applied here, right? I'm missing some of the detailed breakdowns. How did you go about like presenting your skills, right? This is interesting. This is 5 years ago, and this is 2 years ago. So you're, oh, give it some time to load. Interesting. Was this based on a concept? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to keep that in mind. We might circle back onto that later. Medieval Brewery. Let's go. These ones are always like pretty fun. Little medieval dioramas. Same can be applied here, right? The same thinking. Try to cram more value into less images. Because right now, I mean, this one is pretty good, and then you have like a video, and then maybe we can do like 1 or 2 detail shots. But then some of these additional ones is just like, I don't know. One thing that I would focus on for detail shots is if it adds like additional context to storytelling. So for example, this is a medieval brewery, right? Which is really cool. What I would then do is like, okay, this person is drinking from its own supply. So add a chair and then add like, I don't know, a newspaper, and then he's drinking from like his like beer jug, you know? And that would be pretty fun to look at, right? Because then we have the broad view of what is happening. And then you show us like a little intricate like corner that tells a little bit of a story. That would be cool to look into. When was this posted? 5 years ago. So this was from, yeah, student projects. So I'm assuming. Okay, so you were doing personal work, yeah, at school as well, which is cool. And then we have this one here. Let's see. Don't be like me, Stephanie. Come on. These typos, unbelievable. No, I'm just kidding. I type so much wrong stuff on all the stuff that I do. Oh my god. Oh, I don't even want to say some of the recent ones that I've done because they're honestly like horrible. Cool, but interestingly enough, you've lessened on the stuff that probably matters the most, right? It's like your breakdowns. Like, how did you approach things in your scene? Because I can see some fun stuff that you've done, right? But how did you do this? Like, what is, like, if you're showcasing what you're doing here, try to make it, at least if you have like a little bit of a banner on top of it. Let's say vertex color to change the grass color, right? And it also affects like any other surfaces that might be painted too. Put that on here too, because I know that you have this, right? But honestly, I think most people honestly just like straight up ignore this. They don't even notice that it's there. So try to think more about the presentation here. And also no breakdowns. I want to see breakdowns. Come on. Show me those nice juicy sculpts that you're like really good at, right? Be proud of them. Show them off. Make it look really nice. And anything interesting that you've done in this project could be like shown off, right? Because after blending with the ground is cool. I like that. I like that you're showing it off. It is more like the presentation of it, right? That can be improved like a little bit. And then this is from 5 years ago as well. Interesting. Okay. And this is based on a concept too, right? Right. Okay. Let me loop back to what I was thinking earlier. One interesting thing is I can see that you can execute on things, technically, right? Well, technically and artistically, right? The stuff that you're making is really beautiful. What I don't have is I don't know what you can make with your own imagination. That is the thing that I'm missing here, right? Because most of the things, I would say, yeah, all of the things here, they're really well made. They are artistically like really interesting to look at, right? You know how to texture, you know how to sculpt, you know how to present your work. There's, sure, we talked about like some improvements on top of it, right? Which definitely can be applied, but that is more like additional layering on top of the stuff that's already there, right? Me basically saying that the stuff that's already here is really, really good. And the stuff that I'm mentioning is more like the cherry on top, right? One of the fundamental things that I do want to see from you, though, is at this point, you're really good at executing concepts. I want to see you make something for yourself. Like, if we give you, because this is where let's say a junior and maybe even like an intermediate or a senior like separate themselves, right? As a senior, you can be given like a pretty shitty concept, or maybe even like, hey, we're thinking about something like this. What can you do with it, right? And I think all of the stuff that you have on your portfolio is like junior and intermediate level. I think you already can prepare yourself for those questions that you might get from future people, right? Plus, this can also help you with being more applicable for, let's say, remote jobs or freelance jobs too, where you can just be like, hey, look, this is something that I just came up myself, and this is my interpretation of it. And then you take all the learnings that you've taken from like previous iterations and make something that is like truly yours, right? Because that is the main thing that I'm really curious for to see in this iteration. Because otherwise, like it almost feels a little bit. Before I say that, let me be justified when I say that. What I was gonna say is that it's almost like you're staying too much in your comfort zone. And I think it's time for how you can push to like the next level. Right? Because and I was somewhat hesitant to say it because this is more your most recent project, right? And this is an environment. It is following a tutorial, right? Again, nothing wrong with tutorials, but now I want to see, okay, you've learned a bunch of these techniques to make like bigger environments. How are you now going to apply this with your own voice, right? Like what is your own artistic voice in the matter? What would you want to make? Like, let's say I give you a blank page and you have one camera angle, what would you make? Right? That is what I'm really, really curious about now. Because yeah. So there may be that's sort of the feeling that I get. Is that it's time to break a little bit out of the comfort zone and like really expand on where you can take it to the next level when it comes to your own input on things, right? Because again, there's honestly like nothing really wrong with the work here, right? And it sounds so bad when I say it. Like the work here is really good, right? I'm wondering, okay, what is going to be next? Cool. Let's see. Let's take it back. So if we have a look at the list here, let me assign some scores. So hireability, let me actually look. Because we didn't really check like your other platforms, right? Because I'm curious to see if we have a CV or something like that. And I know this is something that we discovered last week, right? Is you need to have pro to have a CV here. I would potentially have your CV in here somewhere then. And link it here. I think that would be best. So that is the one thing that I'm missing to kind of have. Basically, why I want the CV is because I can have this piece of paper. I can store that in our like list of people that we want to reach out to. And then you can become like the next person that we hire for like a freelance gig or whatever it may be, right? But that's really helpful to have that piece of paper still. Other than that, hireability is pretty good. I like the work that you put on display, right? Like your tagline. Didn't we even look at that? 3D artist. I mean, that is your current work tagline, right? So I get it. And I think in this case, you have a pretty solidified view of what people should be hiring you for, right? So I think this is really, really good. Really good portfolio. Hireability is pretty high. The only thing that I would say is like the CV, right? That's where you can add like a couple of points with. The only thing, again, like I want to see, especially relevant for like freelance gigs, right? Where like a client doesn't know what they want and they can just be like, hey, look, here's a bunch of stuff. What do you make from it, right? That's the sort of thing that I want to see you do. The presentation overall is really good. The only thing, I guess we're going to talk about this in technique actually, but the presentation is really good. I think the only comments that I had was like on the older work, right? Where you had like the black and gray backgrounds. That can maybe be improved. Because one thing that I really like, and this is more from like a wide perspective if we look at your portfolio, right? I like when there is a consistent vibrancy throughout a lot of the work that we can see. Whereas this is really vibrant. This kind of has like a vibrancy to it as well. But then you kind of have like these dark spots, right? So that's, if we zoom out a little bit, it would be really cool to have you... yeah, maybe like try different backgrounds. Or try to get everything somewhat consistent in terms of like what it's trying to say, right? I'm actually curious. I don't know how, for example, Jasmine does it. Yeah, because even here, like the consistency is like really good, right? I mean, most of it is professional work, but if we ignore the professional work, yeah, the consistency is pretty good. Like really staying away from like really, really dark colors, and even with the darkest elements, you still get like a lot of vibrancy in them. But for example, what I'm talking about is this, right? Where the background is sort of this like pleasant greenish color. And again, this is minute stuff, right? That is because your work is already really good. So now it then becomes, the question becomes like, how do we take this further, right? So if you were to put them, let's say side by side, we're more looking at it from like this perspective, right? You can kind of see that there's more variation in contrast, and it lacks kind of the consistency, and maybe it's even like a little bit noisy as well. Whereas this feels more clean, you know, in its presentation. And again, small stuff, right? Like this is not going to cost you like a lot of points on the scale, but that is one way that you can take it further. So yeah, presentation, really good. 7, artistry. Yeah, artistically, I think you're doing really good. Obviously, stylized work is definitely going to be easier to showcase, like your art fundamentals on the spectrum, right? But yeah, like all the stuff that I'm seeing here, the way that you do your textures, the way that you use the colors, is really, really good. This is probably where it's going to be weighed down by... yeah, the question is, where are you, right? Because again, it is really good. Let me change some scores here. I'm rejigging things on the fly, right? So again, artistry is really good. But I think this is where the voice, like I'm lacking your voice. That's where this really comes in, right? Yeah, because your composition is good, your focal points and all that kind of stuff is good, but most of that is based on pre-existing concept art, right? Which again, really smart way to do it, right? But if you get really good at that at a certain point, you need to then break away from it and showcase that you've learned all those skills and can apply it to whatever you want. Stephanie saying, totally agree. Thank you for pointing it out. I really need to get out of my comfort zone. Yeah, and it's difficult, right? Because our brain is like over-optimized to like, I don't know, stay away from like all the scary shit that we don't want to deal with, right? But I think if you want to make yourself, and this actually brings it back to like the earlier question that you had from AI, right? You're not really competing with AI at this point. Like what your next step is and what you're really competing with is for people that really put like all the, that are really have a high creative drive, right? Which means that they can come up with their own ideas and make really cool shit out of it too. And then also people that really put the attention to detail into all the places, right? Again, work is good. Techniques can definitely be improved, but like the work is really good. And now I just want to see you like go all in on the presentation. How can you take it to the next level, right? And you can do that in a couple of ways. Let's say if you're, my default is always going to storytelling, right? You've seen a couple of streams before, so you know where this is going to go. But I think that could be a way to like, okay, I'm going to come up with my own story and I'm going to make a sequence of events. So let's say three corners of something, but they're all connected in like a single project, right? And how would I execute on that in like this really awesome stylized style that you have? If you come up with that to me and you're saying like, hey, look, I'm doing this, I'm all on board, right? Because I know that you can do the technical and the artistic stuff. Now I want to see how you can apply it to your own ideas. Again, spinning in circles. So yeah, artistry, I would normally put it higher. But yeah. Techniques, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because the main things that I can judge it on are pretty old. Which doesn't really help you in selling yourself when it comes to the techniques that you use. So, because yeah, let's see, because this is the newest project. That is a cancel project. Does this have like a breakdown? Let's have a look. Oh yeah, it did, right? It's interesting, like your professional work has like more breakdowns than like your personal work. And technically for most people it's the opposite, right? Because it's way more difficult to get approval to get a breakdown done for professional work than it is for personal work. Yeah, but in here I had a couple of questions about trim sheets, right? Like these sections make sense. These sections make probably like a little bit less sense. Maybe some in the context of it maybe makes sense. But then there's probably like a smarter way to do this, right? Where, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, this is interesting. And maybe that's also why you use this course to kind of get you more used to the technical side of things, right? Oh, thanks for the shout out. I appreciate it. Because yeah, you go into like runtime virtual texturing, right? Like all this asset blending and all this vertex painting that it all changes into colors makes a lot of sense to me. But when I talk about techniques, I'm talking about building something at a scale where it's worthwhile to show off techniques, right? Because all of the stuff in this scene is all still individually sculpted. Whereas if you build a scene that has like a bunch of big architecture and you need to work with like modular kits or something like that, that's where the technique really comes in, right? So that would be an easy way to take your stuff to the next level as well. To showcase, let's say, like a really cool modular kit. For example, this is from 5 years ago. I would take this sort of an idea and then apply your current day artistic skills to something like this. That's what I would do. Because this is showcasing a lot of skills, right? It's not only showcasing like unique sculpting, but also foliage and also like modularity as well. So try to think about things in those terms. That you can make a modular kit that can be used to make like a bigger world rather than this unique place. Right? So techniques can definitely be improved, but still pretty good. I would say, how are we going to balance this out? I think artistically you're doing really good. Hireability. I think your hireability is really strengthened by that you have done professional work already. And then your presentation is probably where I had the biggest points, right? So we're probably going to land on something like this. Minival, so much to learn from me. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn for everyone, right? It is the density of things that you need to learn for game art is it's a lot, right? Stephanie is saying, I was thinking about making a modular medieval building kit and then selling it on ArtStation. Yes, you should, but one caveat: don't. And this is going to sound weird, right? But don't start with, hey, I'm going to build a modular kit and sell it. I would start with, hey, I have this cool story that I'm going to build a modular kit around that I'm then going to sell on the marketplace. Because the thing that sells that modular kit is because people can see that they can build their own cool scenes with it. Because if you just build like a generic modular kit, that is pretty boring to look at, right? You need to infuse that with a story, and then you still build like 95% of the assets to be modular, right? And then you give them like a free unique asset that's included in the kit, but that is more built for storytelling purposes. So that means that they look at the potential of the kit, they see that you can make something really cool with it, they can just take the statue or whatever of it out of it, and then they can use the rest of it for their own work, right? That makes a lot of sense to me. But you need some sort of you need a selling point, right? And for most people, that selling point, even though it doesn't really make that much sense, but like most people that are probably going to be buying this are probably not people that are going to be AA or like AAA developers, right? Which that makes total sense, right? But for your target audience, I don't think a lot of people are going to be buying this for its functionality purely. They want to make cool stuff. So try to think about it more in that place. But the rest of it, I fully agree. Go for it. Sell it on our station. Ask a decent price for it. Do it. Do it. Cool. So what stood out on this portfolio? Like really good artistic skills, right? Really good artistic skills. Again, the grit and determination I was really impressed by in the beginning with your CV and your work ethic, right? I think that's really good. So I'm really impressed with that as well. Like a unique selling point. That makes sense. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, no worries. That's one thing that I saw, right? So for example, when we go to my portfolio, which is like, God, so outdated with the stuff that's on there. But let's say this is also, I sold that too, right? But this is like, oh my God, this is like a cool scene. So it has value for my portfolio. And then you can also buy it as like a modular kit as well. And then what I was very specific with, I wanted to tell this story, right? So I wanted to do something like post-apocalyptic, but I didn't really knew what it was going to be first, because that's where the modularity came into the mix, and then I combined the two, right? So it's like, oh, is this like factory that they kind of turned into like the last bastion of defense against like, I don't know, this post-apocalyptic thing that happened, but very, very minor layer of story on it, right? Just as an example. God, how old is that? 8 years? Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Yeah, in your case, good artistic skills, presentation. I was missing some breakdowns, right? Especially in more later pieces. Breakdowns can be applied. But I really want to see more of you in your art, right? Let go of the comfort zone. And show me what you can make. Cool. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much for submitting your portfolio. That's awesome. Again, I really like your work. I really like your work. I really like your consistency, your grit, the way that you apply your skills. Really, really cool stuff. Yeah, now it's the question. The main question is like, how do we take this to the next level, right? Same thing with what you were saying, making like a modular medieval building kit or something like that, and then selling it on our station. Infuse that with a soul that is a story, and then we're on to a good one. All right, let's switch it on over. Let's chat a bit. For people that have been watching, feel free to ask any questions. This is your moment. So the portfolio reviews are over, but if you want to ask any questions, feel free to do so. Stephanie was saying you are very welcome. Yeah, I know I know a couple of people from Vienna now. I think you were from Vienna, right? Yeah. So it's cool. It seems like there's like a mini game dev hub there, even though like the prospects of getting a job there are like pretty slim. I mean, same here in Belgium, right? We don't have a lot of studios. But let's see. Marius was saying, do you extend a trim high poly a little further in the width than the bake plane, or what is the best practice for that? Yeah, you want to do that, right? So you don't want your edges to be baked down onto the plane because then you destroy the tileability. But what you want to do with your sculpt is an easy way of doing this. Let's say you make like a wooden plank, like a wooden floor planks, right? You basically take the same plank, you duplicate that, you take them, and then you move them in the middle of your UV somewhere, so that the split between the two is not on the edges, it's in the middle. And now you can just like tie it endlessly, and it can do that, right? It still has a split. If you don't want to split, then you just like remove the split and you just sculpt it as like one unique piece. But the most important thing is that the information that you sculpt on the left edge needs to be the exact same information that is going to continue on the right edge, right? So that is the most important thing. You can do it in a couple of ways. I think ZBrush has like this trick where you can like wrap your canvas and you can basically sculpt on the left edge and it will continue to the right edge. You can instance mesh it as well, like in Blender. That's usually what I do, depending on what you need, right? George is saying, Vienna! Exactly. Case in point. Let's see. So Ilya is saying, hello, Timothy. How does your perspective on production changes when you move from producing content to sort of managing content production as a lead or higher position? How does your perspective on production changes? Perspective? That's a good question. I mean, it is not your perspective on the production necessarily that changes. Well, maybe it is. It depends on what you mean with production. But when you say production to me, it's like the game as a production, right? Whereas a junior, you are in the trenches, your head down. The only thing that you can see is this one thing that you're doing in front of you, right? And that's where you spend most of your time. And the higher you go up to the seniority level, the more that view needs to broaden out. Because as a senior, and even as an intermediate, right? Like, depending on the production that you work on, you will be talking to different people from different disciplines to make sure that the stuff that you do is also going to work for them as well. And that is the way that like actively broadens the scope or the perspective of what you need to do, right? So that is a good question. And then I think the biggest shift with everyone when they go from again, depends on the studio, but when they go from like an intermediate to a senior, sometimes you get the opportunity to also manage and lead people. I think that is the biggest change that happens because that is a totally different skill set that you need. And for a lot of people, it can be the most fulfilling skill set that you're going to be teaching yourself, right? But that is definitely like a big shift. When it comes to managing content, usually as a lead or a senior or something like that, I do have to say I've never worked as a lead. Interestingly enough, I don't really have an interest in being a lead. Because I still like working on stuff. I think the shift happens when from senior to lead, in most cases that I've seen, is that leads focus more of their time actually actively managing the project and managing people rather than doing work themselves. Again, depends on the project. And that's not something that I was interested in. I love mentoring people. I love working on games. I do enough I do enough business and management on my own time to not have an interest of doing that in my professional time. That's the way that I structured my life, right? A lot of people are very different than that, but that's the way that I structured my life. But yeah. So that also means that in a lot of cases, you'll be more involved with like outsource management. I've done a lot of outsource management too, where it's basically you talk to external teams, you give them feedback, you set up briefs, you basically define the pipeline for them as well, compared to your in-house team. I've done that a couple of times. But yeah. Hope that answers the question. Feel free to ask me more about that. For a self-taught artist, is one good environment and one good prop enough to start applying? Depends on your definition of good, right? I think, and also the tag of self-taught artist doesn't matter in this case, right? I think if you have one good environment and one good prop, you can start applying. The thing is, starting to apply is a way to get data on if you are good enough to get into the industry, right? That's all that you need to look at it as. It's basically you testing the water on if you are ready for the industry. So some people do this earlier and they might get lucky. Some people do this earlier and they might not get lucky and then realize that they need to invest more time, right? But I would try to build yourself a realistic idea of what that might mean by looking at other recently hired juniors in the industry. Just go look at ArtStation, look at what other people are doing, and then see how you compare to them. I think that might be the best way to do like a comparison game, right? You don't want to compare yourself to like seniors or anything like that. You want to compare yourself to a person that just got the position for a company that you want to work for. I think that is a good way of comparing yourself. When planning trim sheets, does the trim size always need to match the dimensions of the unwrapped island, or is in general the workflow to adjust the UV of a trim after they've been created? No, you cannot remain like 100% consistent textile density with your UVs. That's just impossible. Because if you were to do that, then you're going to limit the modeling, right? Because then you can only model to certain like increments of sizes, right? Which is not what you want to do. And if you do it the opposite way, where so basically we do it the opposite way, where you just like model whatever you want and then find like the best thing that works towards it. And then if it's too big, you need to cut some additional loops in it and then maybe split your UVs and do some smart stuff there. But yeah, you're not going to get like 100% perfect textile density with it. I do also want to say, the goal for any game out there is not to have perfect textile density, right? You do not have to be perfect with your textile density. That is not the goal. Textile density is there to give you a number that you should be sticking really close to. But if you let's say you work on like a modern AAA game, and let's say you decide to scale down your UVs to a certain degree, let's say that degree is 20%. I would argue that from like around 15 to 20%, you are not even going to see the difference in resolution between those two surfaces if we assume that you have 1 or 2K textile density per meter. I don't think you're going to see it. So that's the thing. Like you don't need like 100% perfect textile density. You can scale things up and down, right? It's when it gets above. This is sort of my own personal benchmark, right? If it gets above like 30%, then we're playing with fire a little bit. And obviously, if we go above 50%, then you're definitely going to see a change. So we don't want to see 50% scaling on like different UV sets. UV islands. Sorry, not sets. But yeah. It's a good question though, because I think a lot of people look at textile density as a number and they're just like, oh my God, I need to be 100% perfect with that. It's not true. It is not true. I will also send an article that I've written. I've actually, yesterday I cleaned it up. So it's actually readable again because it was completely broken. But if you want to know more about textile density and trim sheets, you can actually just go check out these two resources. One, the textile density one is written by me, and then the other one is written by Scott Daniel Burns. So you can learn more about those two topics right there if you wanted to. But yeah, in general, a self-taught artist is not going to be a difference, right? Because the same judgment is still going to be applied on your portfolio, whether you're self-taught artist or you are a university student. You are going to go into the same bucket of people that are looking for the same jobs. So you're still going to be graded the same. So that doesn't matter. Lily is saying, I really miss the ArtStation challenges. And then Stephanie's saying the same thing, like same here. I wish they continued them. Yeah, what happened to them? Because, I mean, they're still doing them, right? But they're like, yeah, weird ones. They have like an Unreal Dance animation challenge. And then, I guess the last one was like Project Titan, right? Which, when the hell did that happen? When the hell did that happen? 2024. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while. But hey, that's why we got the team challenges, right? Let's go. Okay, so specifically for people that have taken part in the team in the ArtStation challenges, what specifically do you miss about them? I'm curious. Because I've also taken part in like a couple of them, right? Was it more like the community aspect of it? Because that is probably the thing that I miss the most, where you were working on something that was like very public on your ArtStation, and like other people were looking at it and commenting, and you would be doing the same thing with other people too. Because to me, really enough, it was never about like doing the work. It was more, well, of course it was about doing the work. But the thing that I remember the most about it is the connections that I've built, or like the people that I talk to, you know? Or just you would see someone post an update and it's like, oh my God, that looks so cool, you know? That's what I miss about them. But yeah, it is a shame. It is a shame. They should bring them back, honestly. They should bring them back. Let's have a look. Cool. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna head on off. I might just jump into like the voice chat in our community and chill out there for a bit. So if you want to join me, talk to me, that would be cool. But I'm probably just gonna chill out, play some games, have a chat with people. So I am heading off. I appreciate everyone for being here. God dang it. I forgot to share people's portfolio again. Damn it. I'm sorry, people. I need to get better at this stuff, you know. Let me go back. Okay, so first person we had a look at today is Tim Chi, right? So let me share his link. Ooh. So this is Tim Chi's portfolio, and then we had Stephanie's portfolio, of course, as well. So feel free to check them both out. Give them a like, give them a follow. I always appreciate people for being, honestly, like pretty vulnerable, for like putting themselves out there and then allowing me to give feedback in such a public way as well. So I really appreciate you both putting yourself out there. I hope it was really helpful. If you got any follow-up questions, you know where to find me on Discord. Send me a message. That's highly appreciated. And with that, if you want to join our lovely community, you can literally just go to our website, beyondsin.com, become a member, get your portfolios reviewed. We do weekly work in progress updates. So if you want to share your work, if you want to share your work, I give like weekly feedback and all that good stuff. There's a bunch of cool stuff that's included with it, so go check it out. But with that, I'm out. I wish you all a nice Friday. A nice Friday. Have a nice start of your weekend, and then we'll see each other next week.